protecting our community is worth a shot. Vaccines can help protect you, your family, and our community. Stop by James Drugstore today.
And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show, a podcast brought to you by the Livingston Parish News. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news, and we got a regular guest back in here. We do want to apologize to him. He and I were discussing before the show partially corrupt video from his first one. Not his first one, but the last one.
The last one, right.
But we're trying to get back on track. Hopefully we don't have any problems with that this time. Haven't had any corruption problems before or since. So good stuff, but we're going to let him introduce himself this morning, and we appreciate him taking the time. So good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic. I'm Gerard Landry, the mayor of the city of Denham Springs.
And we appreciate you taking the time. A lot of times we're just kind of, talking about what's going on inside the city, sort of the normal business of the city. But today, very specific topic of conversation. Last night, we're recording this Wednesday, November 10th.
Correct.
And last night, Tuesday, November 9th, y'all had a presentation from the Louisiana Watershed Initiative about a buyout program inside the city limits of Denham Springs. There's a lot of levels to this. This kind of started a few years prior. First, we're just going to talk about the very basic, what they presented to you all in terms of a buyout program and what that means for the city. So first and foremost, give us sort of the 3 to 4 minute elevator speech of what Louisiana Watershed was proposed or is proposing to the city and what they're trying to do. It's all revolves really around Spring Park.
Sure. So they approached us here a while back, Louisiana Watershed Initiative, and suggestions on what we can do to help municipalities. They put together a program where now they're going to offer buyouts to citizens in repetitive loss areas or severe repetitive loss areas in municipalities. I think they have 7 or 8 or 10 areas in the state, and we are fortunate enough to be one of them. They came to visit us when Rick Foster and I visited with them and showed them what we thought were the areas of the city that needed the most help. It's kind of obvious when you look at River Road, right there at the Spring Park, First Baptist Church, First Baptist Church area. That's the low part of the city, without a doubt. So we took them over there, showed them the lay of the land, kind of gave them a Cliff Notes version of what our vision was for the future. The vision was what was presented to us from 2017 meetings that we had with the public, right? We had 800 citizens come through and came up with the Denham Strong Plan.
Sure.
The Denham Strong Plan is not my plan. It is a plan that was given to us by the citizens. We compiled it, put it together, and in there we even talk about it could take months, it could take years, it may take decades for some of these plans to come to actually happen. So, fast forward to now. And then when we met with these folks and they saw that we actually had a plan, they were so excited because sometimes they go to communities and they don't have a clue where they're going. They don't even know where they've been.
Right.
And so we were very fortunate that we did have the Denham Strong Plan. And when they saw it, they got very, very excited. And actually, they tripled the amount of funds that are going to be available to us. And they're going to let us have access to $10 million. Now, what is the money for? So the money is in this identified area. The Spring Park Plan or Spring Park Program is what they're calling it. It goes from Spring Park on River Road down to where the animal shelter is, from River Road to the river. Probably a little over 100 properties. Some of them are absolutely gorgeous homes. Some of them are just blighted properties that need to go away. Those owners will be approached by the initiative. They have a contractor that's going to go out and knock on doors and call people and contact folks. And it's in the prioritized. We got 1, 2, and 3 zones. They're going to start off in 1. They're going to ask for volunteers to call in, email in, or whatever, and then they'll call them back and start the process. But it's a very simple process that allows the folks to have their properties purchased from them at appraised value. No money out of pocket. Now, that's unusual because the programs that we've had through FEMA before, the acquisitions and elevations, typically is 25% out of pocket. A lot of folks just don't have that kind of money sitting in their account.
Sure.
So they're not able to take advantage of it. This one is totally different because at 100%, man, that's an offer some folks can't refuse.
Sure.
It applies to property owners. It applies to landlords that may have multiple rental units in that spot, and it also applies to renters. So the money is available for a lot of folks, and the only criteria is obviously the severity of the losses that you've incurred and they want you to relocate to an area that does not flood.
Sure. And there are a lot of homes in there that are I mean, they're owned, but they're not owner occupied. They're rental properties.
Correct.
So it's same offer being extended to those property owners.
That's correct.
Okay. And if they have a renter, are they willing to help relocate?
Yes.
Okay. So that all very interesting. Trying to keep all different types of property owners or occupiers on the top of mind, I guess you can say.
That's the whole idea, and it's really to even go down to the level of the renter himself and try to offer them assistance is pretty fabulous when you come right down to it.
Sure.
So there's still there's some of the language that's brought over from some of the other FEMA programs is duplication of benefits. So if you have received money from the government for this property, that will be deducted from the total.
Gotcha. Okay. That's important to note.
It is, and then there's also there's some blighted properties, let's say, and I know we have our own blight court, and we're trying to work through that. It's a mess trying to find some of these owners, but they have a legal staff that will also help us try to track down who these owners are and try to help them resolve their issues. Whenever they put together the deal for that particular homeowner, they pay off their mortgage if there is one, they pay off any liens, and they just walk away. So it's really an ideal situation.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like a good situation. I mean, some of that duplication of benefit stuff causes some pause with folks. So it'll be interesting to see, as this program gets started, how many people that actually affects and whether or not it affects their decisions. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that it started off at $2.9 million, and from that point they came to visit. You kind of knew that you were getting this money. They were coming in, as in Louisiana Watershed Initiative was coming in to meet with you and city building inspector or city building official. I don't know which one he likes to go by, Mr. Rick Foster. Because y'all or the city had this plan, it was really that plan which caused your money pot to go up, correct?
Sure. Federal money likes to follow plans. They're just not going to hand you a check and say, look, go just do what you need to do. So the fact that we already had a plan in place, and I learned this 5 years ago whenever we started this whole process with the Office of Community Development and Sandra Gunner. You got to have a plan in place if you're going to go after FEMA money or any federal dollars. So, and she was so right. And so we've got this plan together. That's what started the Denham Springs Initiative. And when these folks saw it, they said, oh my gosh, you have a plan. Let's, and then they went back and it got us up to $10 million now. So, and that seems to be the standard amount that some of these other municipalities around the state have received. But the offer initially was going to be 3.
Right. So, or really just shy of 3.
Just shy of 3, yeah.
So the interesting thing as well is, when you have a plan and you get money like this, it tends to spark the plan into actual action. And of course, that area has been, I mean, if you take a step back and look at it, it is very clearly a slough. I mean, when you get down into it,
it is.
Centerville at range is already low, and it just keeps getting lower from there. So it's going to be interesting to see how many people participate in the project, as we mentioned. But of course, the long-term plan, as discussed with LSU students from the architecture and engineering schools, correct?
Landscape architects.
Landscape architects.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a lot of proposed implements for that area. Of course, real quick, if you can, where does the church stand? I know that the church is, I see you taking a deep breath. I know that it's a long process. It's a big church.
It is a very long process, but I really feel like we will see some movement, let's say within the next year.
Okay.
And they are actively pursuing the funding that they can receive to tear down that building.
Gotcha.
And then the normal process is the federal funds tear down the building, make sure it's asbestos free, and it gets back to clean dirt, and then it's given to the city.
Gotcha.
And we're excited because that's part of the landscape architect's plan to possibly do something on that particular site. Now, there is an old graveyard directly behind it. The city had taken possession of that graveyard decades ago.
Sure.
And we have 2 council folks that are excited about the possibility of fundraising and doing something different to bring it back up. I hate to use the word bring it back to life, but it needs some TLC.
Sure.
It's been neglected for decades now. So
yeah, I remember the local Rotary Club went in there a few years back.
That's
and cleaned some things up, but it's a very old cemetery, and it does need some help. So let's talk about the plan in total, because it started off as liaising with LSU trying to find a way not only to better utilize Spring Park, but to connect it with downtown and downtown improvements as well. And they kind of, the connection was sort of part of the general plan, but otherwise improving the Spring Park area and improving downtown were two totally separate things. Since this is mostly a Spring Park program, let's talk about that portion of the plan.
Sure.
The biggest deal was multi-use type deals, like an amphitheater, things of that nature for water retention. So I would imagine it would involve gravity drainage, but we'll talk about that later. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that the LSU students came up for the Spring Park / Baptist Church area.
So there's been a whole lot of projects that we've had suggested to us. One of the things that we did do is we had LSU geology professor come out and actually try to locate, and he has documented where the old hotels were downtown in that Spring Park area, right?
Sure.
Which is what it was built for back in the decades. I mean, back in the hundreds of years ago, to have access to the healthy issues of the springs.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we have those spots located, and if we can make the Spring Park itself much more user friendly, much more attractive to citizens to be able to go out there and maybe spruce up the pavilion, I think we can make it more a lot more accessible, and people would be proud to go out there and use it and utilize it. Right.
Right.
Now, the architecture students came up with the location of where the church, First Baptist Church, is, and they had one thing was an amphitheater type setup, or a water detention, a skateboard park. There's all kinds of ideas and it was just strictly suggestions. But you hit the nail on the head. If it's an amphitheater and it happens to have a grass bottom, guess what? It can become a detention pond.
Sure.
Which helps with the local flooding during the. Look, nothing's going to help us during the 2016 event that we can do. That's a much bigger scale. But on local heavy rains, a detention area like that would be awesome to have. And if it has a grass bottom, it just drains out naturally. And you may have to go in and clean it after an event like that, and bring it back to the state that you want to keep it. But it also opens up the opportunity across the street with all these homes that are hopefully going to be bought out. That becomes now a place for water to be held as well.
Sure.
And then in its natural state, it could be it could be a walking trail, a bicycle trail, a jogging trail. It could possibly be access to the river. Okay. And it's not necessarily mandatory that every house is gone. You could have houses if the citizens wanted to remain, and they would just become they'd be situated in a wooded area now.
Sure.
And if that's what they want to do, that's fine. And we're not going to force anybody to do anything.
I got you. So let's, for real quick.
Sure.
You brought up something that I know was an original, something you said on the campaign trail. Let's put it that way. River access. It's there. I think, as you always said it, we always have to wait for it to come to us. We can't go to it. Would this be a step in that direction? Because I know years ago there was a initial discussion of buying land south of Denham and trying to connect down there. That it didn't pan out. I think the flood was partially to blame for that. But would this be a move in that direction?
I can't help but think that it would be. I don't exactly know where the ferry crossing used to be back 100 years ago. I don't know. I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard to find out. But if we have several acres of property back there that face the river, the good Lord knows what could happen. It could be a floating dock. It could be, you and I joked about Denham Springs riverboat casino.
Sure.
And that'll never happen. Okay, but there's the opportunities are there.
Right.
And if we don't take the opportunity today to plant the seed for what we might want to see, it'll never happen.
Sure.
So you have to think outside the box. You have to dream a little bit, and you have to make sure that that's what the citizens want.
Sure.
And so access to the river, yeah, we shouldn't have to wait for it to come see us. We should go see it.
Sure.
Without a doubt.
So when you're talking about that area and these people being bought out and that sort of thing, what would you say to citizens that might immediately sort of have some pushback? The government coming in to buy the land and this kind of thing. What is your statement to them?
My hope is that you take this as an opportunity to get out of a situation that maybe you financially couldn't because of like we talked about earlier. If you were going to do an elevation or a buyout, that's 25% out of your pocket. you may not be able to afford that. Okay, there could be a situation where maybe your house is already elevated, but every time the water comes up, you don't know if you're going to be able to get home, or you don't know if you're going to be able to leave because your road is underwater. And those kinds of pressures on families is very difficult. I had done a podcast with a friend of ours, Jim Chapman, here a few months ago, and he asked me a question. He said, "If the FEMA ferry could give you one thing, what would it be?" And I said, "Every citizen could go to bed at night knowing that he's not going to get flooded."
Right.
So simple,
Yeah,
but it's a very complicated fix,
it is.
and it's not just what we can do here in the city. So if somebody can sleep better because they can move away from the river or from the flooding issues, then you know what, that's what they need to do. So it's not a mandatory thing. It's just going to be let's try to take advantage of the program that's there.
Right.
We don't know what the next one's going to be. The next one could be even better.
Sure.
You know, there was a gentleman at the meeting last night, and look, by the way, we had several people at the meeting, and they were all excited about it. Okay.
Sure.
And this one guy said, "Man, I wish I'd have known about this 2 years ago. I wouldn't have torn down that house."
Right.
Well, it wasn't available 2 years ago.
Right.
So it's here now. All we can do is make the best of it. But he has an empty lot, and guess what? They'll buy his empty lot from him.
Oh, okay.
So you know, that's
All types of property owners.
it doesn't matter.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. The cap is $250,000, and you know, if you don't want to move, that's fine.
Now, when the federal government comes and buys these folks out, or when FEMA does, I just call it the federal government's extension of.
Sure.
Do they then give the land to you
Yes,
as the city?
That's
Not
correct.
you personally, obviously, but the city.
that's correct. City takes ownership of it. We'll take care of maintenance and cutting grass. And I really don't want to get into cutting grass, but if it's part of a natural park setting, you know, there's some logical things that we can do just to maintain the canopy and have a walking trail or a bicycle, something that can be done fairly easily, right?
Sure.
And then as funds become available, because look, you never know when the next pot of money is going to come or what's going to be available, and we just have to stay out there and keep looking and searching to make sure that we take advantage of all those opportunities that come to us.
Sure, and I suppose what you just said kind of brings us around full circle. You never know when the next pot of money is going to come, but if you have a plan for it, you get in line for it.
Like the bicycle pedestrian plan. You know, we got a grant to do the bicycle pedestrian plan with the city of Baker. We both have plans, and the federal government paid for it. So
Right.
now the funding is the issue, but because of those two pedestrian plans, Livingston Parish, Ascension Parish, and East Baton Rouge Parish are doing what? They're doing a parish-wide bicycle pedestrian plan to try and tie everybody together. Now, if we have everybody on board, the federal dollars might be easier to get if you start impacting maybe 1 million people
Sure.
instead of just 10,000.
More voice, more people at the table too.
That's
You know,
exactly
to,
right.
to lobby for the money.
Yeah, so you know, I'm proud that we're able to at least be the initial spark, if you will.
Sure.
And when they saw the success of the turnout, again, the bicycle pedestrian plan was well attended by the citizens and voiced their opinions. And so you know, we can just build on that and go forward. And look, in today's world, as bad as traffic is, people are looking for alternatives. Okay, be it mass transit, maybe even taking a bicycle across the river to work. You know, who knows?
Sure. So, can you give us sort of a general idea of the geographic area that this covers? We talked a lot about the Spring Park area, but it actually goes further south than that.
As far as the
I'm sorry, the Spring Park buyout program sort of came back.
the Spring Park buyout program goes from Spring Park to Bowman Street, where the animal shelter is, from the River Road back towards the river.
Gotcha.
Right now, that's the geographical area. They may expand it. They could.
Sure.
But that's the initial part that they identified.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay. So, if you could please, let's to sort of wrap it up here. If you could give that 3 to 4 minute elevator speech about the program, just bring that back, and then we'll check out for the day.
Certainly. Spring Park buyout program. It's initiated by the Louisiana Watershed Initiative. We were able to get involved in it, able to get approved. We have $10 million to help people leave their property if they so desire. This is strictly voluntary, but it gives the family an opportunity to move. It gives the family an opportunity. There's also one of the things that's in there is the incentives. They may approach a particular family. Let's say there's a husband and wife and 3 kids. They're actually going to help you utilize HUD guidelines. So if you're living in a 1,000 square foot house and HUD guidelines say it needs to be a 1,300 square foot house, they'll incentivize you by giving you enough dollars to buy a 1,300 square foot house. So they're doing everything they can to get these folks the help that they need and the relief from flooding.
Okay. All righty, sir. Well, we appreciate you taking the time today to join us and talk about this program. When will it start?
last night.
Immediately, okay.
Immediately. So there's there's a contractor in Baton Rouge that it's going to take, and they will start to immediately contact the homeowners. Obviously, the homeowners can contact us. Just call Rick Foster's office and get on the list, and then we'll forward it to those folks, and they'll reach out to them. There's just a small process to go through, and I think they actually want to hit the ground running, and they hope to have anybody that wants this process to have them done by next year. This is not something that's going to take years. They're willing to move very, very quickly, and once everything's approved, I think closing is within 45 days.
Wow.
So it's really quick.
And then they'll just come in and tear it down.
Come in and tear it down. So that's on the one hand, it's a sad thing. What we said in 2016, the flood has changed Denham Springs.
Yes.
It's not necessarily all bad. When you stop and think about the brand new elementary school that we have, the brand new junior high and elementary school with Southside, we got a new city hall. There's so many good things that have happened. I've always said if you could just remove the pain and suffering and the personal loss, personal possessions that we all had to endure, if you could just take that and kind of put it off to the side, the buildings in Denham Springs are better now because they're built to code, wiring's up to date, electrical's up to date, and with this blighted property gone, the real estate values are going to continue to increase.
Sure.
So
I just there was a question I did want to ask you, and it just struck me, so I'm going to stick it in here at the end. If they are only semi-successful, is this just we're going to come in, we're going to try, and whoever wants to do it can do it, and whoever doesn't?
pretty much.
Okay. Because I know that they basically want to clear that area out of property, and some people won't agree.
And I get that, and that's perfectly fine. But I just want to make sure. I want to make sure that our citizens have the opportunity.
Sure.
If they need help, if they want their property to be bought out so they can relocate to someplace where they don't have to worry about flooding. If it's blighted and they can't afford to leave, then maybe somebody can help them. It's all about helping folks. This is really what we do.
Sure.
It's not about forcing anybody to do anything.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you, sir. We
Thank you.
appreciate you joining us. If you'll reintroduce yourself as we head on out.
Gerard Landry, the mayor of the city of Denham Springs.
And my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us here for the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show. Please remember the news is on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. We are once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month to get that in your mailbox. We're also online, www.livingstonparishnews.com. Again, we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.